These games are objectively primitive, and yet they still look so damn good. And you know what's wild? Games that look like this are making a comeback. The developer Sodaraptor is a master at this craft. Indie developers are deliberately making their games look worse, because PS1 graphics have something modern, photorealistic games will never capture. Okay, so PS1 graphics are objectively terrible, right? Vertices wobble around because the GPUs at the time couldn't handle floating point math, making them snap to integers. And the classic texture warping of the PS1 can be almost nauseating at times because the PS1 used affine texture mapping instead of perspective correct mapping. Games were usually rendered at 240p and ran at 20 frames per second. The lighting is harsh and flat because there's basically no color depth. They had 4 kilobytes for texture memory. By every technical metric, this should look terrible. But it doesn't. Or at least it doesn't feel bad. There's something compelling about these visuals that modern games struggle to capture. And I don't think it's just nostalgia. I mean, I was born in 2003, I didn't grow up with this, but I still find myself incredibly drawn to it. The actual reason is simpler. When you have brutal constraints, you make decisive choices. You can't afford to be generic. Every texture, vertex, and color simply has to matter, because you have almost nothing to work with. That artistic specificity is what reads as style. It's decisive art direction under hard constraints. The hardware limits of the time forced the developers to forego detail and instead focus on the big things like strong silhouettes, bold color choices, and stylized environments. Take Tomb Raider for example. Lara Croft is made of about 250 polygons, which is basically nothing today. But you always know exactly what you're looking at because her silhouette is crystal clear. And the environments are these big chunky geometric forms. A ledge is a ledge and a pillar is a pillar. They couldn't afford to clutter the world with a bunch of BS. What you see is what you get. And that texture limit of 4 kilobytes, well, it just killed any possibility of fancy shaders or highly detailed surfaces. So the developers instead went bold. Colors had to communicate instantly what something was. Lava, water, stone. You see it, understand it, and then you move the hell on. And then there's Silent Hill, and you know, everyone knows this one, but it's worth repeating. The fog exists because the PS1 couldn't render more than like 20 meters in front of you. And that's like 65 feet for my American friends. The draw distance was just awful. But Team Silent looked at this limitation and went, okay, we're making a horror game, what if we just lean into this? And then, fog is no longer covering up a technical problem, it is now the design. It's exactly why the game feels the way it does. You just can't fake realism with 500 polygons and a 240p frame buffer, you know, you just can't. So instead you have to focus on something else. Every design choice has to be intentional. So once developers stopped trying to make things look real, they started making things look distinct. Wipeout is probably the best example of this. It's a racing game, sure, but one that looks like a graphic design project wrapped in Y2K futurism. It's drippy as hell. Everything is hyper clean, you got sharp lines, bold colors, massively stylized typography, and the UI looks like a nightclub poster from, I don't know, 200 years in the future. The ships themselves look like concept sketches. They are so dope. This game knows exactly what it is. You see a screenshot out of context and you're gonna know it's Wipeout because the visual identity is just that strong. Spider-Man on PS1 does the same thing but in a completely different direction. The city is abstracted instead of realistic. Buildings have simple geometry, the skyline has shapes and fog, but it genuinely feels like playing a comic book. The way Spider-Man moves, the exaggerated proportions, and combat straight out of a comic panel. The bright primer colors, everything just melts together, and it's literally an interactive comic book, and I love it. And then there's Pepsi-Man. I mean, what do I even say? It's a game where you play as a sentient Pepsi can man running through levels collecting Pepsi. The enemies are absurd. You got pedestrians, trucks, mole people. The entire premise is just absurd, but it commits. It's just Pepsi-Man. The point is, none of these games are asking, how close can we get to reality? No, they're asking, what do we want the player to feel? And then they take that question seriously. Modern photorealistic games often end up in this zone of like almost real but not quite, and it ends up looking really weird. It's something called the uncanny valley. PS1 games, however, were exactly what they were trying to be. Realism is always a moving target. What looked photorealistic in 1996 looks dated now. What will look photorealistic in 2030 might make today's games look dated. You know, that's just how the industry works. Stylization doesn't really have that problem. It sets its own rules. Gran Turismo is interesting because it was going for realism. I mean, it's a racing sim, but with only a few hundred polygons per car, they couldn't detail model every panel and rivet, so instead they focused on presentation. Clean shapes and sharp reflections on the body work really well. The strong contrast between the matte track surface and the glossy car paint works wonders for the aesthetic. The cars don't look real, but they look good, and more importantly, they look good now. The design language holds up because it's stylized. Dead or Alive did something similar with characters. The models are very blocky and the textures are simple, but the silhouettes are strong. You can tell characters apart instantly by shape and color. The animations are exaggerated and readable, which matters way more in a fighting game than sheer polygon count. And yeah, the jiggle physics, they went for it. It's goofy, it's excessive, it's very much a product of late 90s Japanese game design, but it's also a stylistic choice that kind of went on to define the entire series. Of course, not all games from the PS1 have aged equally well. The games that did are the ones that knew exactly what they were, and the ones that aged poorly, well, they're the ones that were trying to look realistic and just couldn't get there with the hardware. There's something specific about texture warping I want to talk about. Texture warping, along with the vertex wobble of course, immediately tells you this is not real, this is a video game. And weirdly, that's comforting. The way surfaces jitter and textures slide around on polygons, it's almost like the tech is reminding you that it is just that, tech. It's a constant reminder that you're in a constructed space playing a game. And there's something homey about it, arcadey even. It feels honest in a way that modern attempts at realism sometimes don't. The game feel is just there, part of the experience. It's the same reason pixel art feels good. Your brain isn't trying to reconcile what it's seeing with reality, it can just accept the visual language on its own terms and relax into it for what it is. Pixel art. It's art. That warping and wobbling creates distance from realism, and that distance is actually what makes it comfortable to look at. You're not being asked to believe it's real, you're just being asked to play. So what can modern developers learn from this? Pick a visual direction and commit to it. The games that break through aren't the ones trying to look AAA on a budget. They're the ones that look like nothing else. Constraints, I mean, they help a lot. When you have unlimited resources, it's so easy to just add stuff until it looks acceptable or like something. But acceptable isn't memorable. The PS1 forced decisions, and that made art. You can create your own constraints, I mean, limited palettes, specific shapes, whatever, just pick something. Just make sure you have something to push against. And realism isn't the goal. Wipeout doesn't look real, Silent Hill doesn't look real, they look like themselves, and that's infinitely more valuable. The PS1 proved that technical limitations don't prevent strong art direction, I mean, they demand it. You simply can't hide behind detail when you have so little to work with, and you have to design with intention. That lesson still applies, even with modern hardware. You know what? Especially with modern hardware, where it's so easy to make something that looks fine but feels like nothing. Don't reinvent the creative wheel. Pick a visual direction and commit to it fully.